My son's missing. He's taken down next to
I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flaming
Cult members that worship little g gods of their own making aren't exclusive to America. They're even in Israel, but like watching predictive programming, using discernment, we can gain insights into the enemy's plans. Like with this guy that was just interviewed on the street in Israel by Brother Jeff with Highway 53 News YouTube channel in Israel, who claims to be Jesus' brother and that he knows Moses. That Jesus is not the Messiah, but we will soon learn who the Messiah is because he is coming. Get this, at the end of March. Now, where have I heard this before? My point is, if the enemy's deceived followers are all now simply stating with certainty their Messiah is coming on a date, and not just any date, the day on my timeline, I say my research into the Essenes and the Dead Sea Scrolls has led me to conclude is the last day of the 6,000 years from the creation of Adam, and therefore the last day by which the tribulation must start, for my interpretation of their beliefs to be correct. Of all days this stranger on the street could have chosen, what does the enemy know that those not watching don't know? I believe I know who this guy's Messiah will be, and it ain't Jesus, or Melchizedek for that matter. It ain't no one good, let me put it that way. I'll play the clip in a second, but seriously, when you hear the enemies deceived stating the final 6,000th day from the creation of Adam, as the Essenes believed, and regardless of the date, if the Essenes are correct, and I understand them correctly, and that's 14 days after the end of the Age of Grace, 14 days into the final Jubilee, within the second Messianic window, and we that know the Bible and what it says about the opening of the first seal and the releasing of the white horse, who is the Antichrist, and that seal is only opened after the bride has left and the tribulation has started, and that day just so happens to be the same day this guy is on about? I don't know, guys.
Secret
I
knowledge?
talk to them.
Secret knowledge? Oh, you do?
Yes.
How do you do that?
I have a disability. You say that Jesus will come.
I say he already
He is
came.
the Mashiach.
Yes.
He is not, but in 2 months the Mashiach will appear.
In 2 months from now?
Yes.
I'm
At
kind of
the
excited.
end of March.
I hope so. קראת את הברית החדשה?
No.
Yeah, are you interested in the ברית החדשה?
No.
Really? Because ישוע הוא בעצמו יהודי.
Okay.
הוא לא בא
He's not really Jewish, but there is nothing really Jewish, Christianity, Muslim. It's just in this world.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Outside,
There's no real religion.
There is no. It's only for this world, for this Sims game.
But we live here.
Yeah, right now.
So.
But everything soon is gonna be in peace again.
Really?
Yes.
And you think the Messiah is going to do this?
In 2 months, you will see him.
Really?
Yes.
So maybe we can exchange information.
Yes.
And if it doesn't happen, we can talk about it.
Yeah, it happened for sure.
Really?
Yes.
Did you hear that? Tell the world what's happening in 2 months.
In 2 months, you're gonna see who is the Messiah, who is the king of Messiah.
What's your name again?
Chock-Full-O.
Rochviel?
Yes. I'm Moses' young brother.
You're Moses' younger brother?
Yes.
Are you a Cohen?
No, before this world.
Oh, before this world?
Yes.
Thank you for
I'm
stopping.
also Jesus' brother.
You're Jesus' brother?
Yes, also the young one.
Yeah, but do you know that in the Brit Chadashah it says if you don't have the son, you don't have the father.
What do you mean?
It means אם אין לך את הבן,
Okay.
Yeshua, you don't have the father.
What do you mean you don't have the son?
Jesus came and he said, I bring a new covenant, a Brit Chadashah. This is the covenant that is in my blood, and it will be the covenant that takes away your sin. And if you put your faith in
Just for the agenda. He came here to make the Christianity to divide the people more.
you think so?
Yes, it's to make the Christianity.
There's nothing that in the New Testament that says that. He came to bring everyone
That's
together.
what they say. And basically, there is a lot of good things in the Christianity, like that he spread love and everything.
Yeah.
I didn't read it, so I don't really remember
I have one.
everything.
Would you like?
But no, I'm very busy.
There's nothing in the Tanakh or in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, that says he came to start a new religion. Kol ha'okvim shelo.
But that's what he did.
That's what happened.
Yes.
That's what happened.
Yes.
But it was the continuation of the promises from the Tanakh. I'm Sheikh, the fulfillment. He says, I'm the fulfillment. He's the fulfillment of the law of Moses.
Okay.
And if you put your faith in him, you will have forgiveness of sin and everlasting life. I
know
consider it. I consider it.
Like there is, it's a long story.
Okay.
Okay, you will hear it
Okay.
soon.
2 months?
Maybe more.
Okay.
No, in 2 months you're gonna
Yeah.
meet the Messiah.
Okay.
But I will tell the story maybe a little bit more in 2 months. All the story of what happened here before genocide
Okay.
and over the years.
Genesis, Bereshit, בעצם?
Yes.
Yeah. From Genesis on?
Yes.
Wow.
What happened before Genesis?
Yeah.
Why they make this world and what's happened after.
Yeah. Who made the world?
My father and mother,
Your father and mother?
Yava and Anuki.
Interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I watched a video by AOC Networks about Jared Kay's master plan to rebuild Gaza into essentially a palatial area fit for Satan himself, certainly not for the average tourist. That was actually all prophesied in the Bible as the actual location of the future palace for Satan himself in Daniel 11:45. And I'll read from the Amplified Version. It says, "He will pitch his palatial tents between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, Zion, yet he will come to his end with no one to help him," meaning in his final battle with God. And there's only one place between the holy mountain or the Temple Mount and the sea, and its name is Gaza. And I'm not even mentioning that more than half of his master plan, Jared's that is, centers on a place called Khan Yunis, which I've talked about for like the last 2 years, which in Palestinian Arabic dialect means city of Jonah. And I'll be speaking of Jonah here in a bit, or rather about the Jonah and the 2 signs of Jonah for 2 wicked generations. Did you know there were 2 signs of Jonah? They're the same thing, but they happen to 2 different wicked generations, one at the beginning of the Age of Grace and one at the end of the Age of Grace. If you're familiar with my timeline, you'll know that I base my research on the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes specifically, their calendar, their age dispensations, their prophecies, etc. And I like to think I've pieced much of it together such that I've zeroed in on the window of time within which Jesus will return for his bride. And so, using their calendar, their new year starts on March 17th. For ease of understanding, this is imprecise, but it's the easiest way to explain things that means to the layman that it's 2025 through March 16th. It's tough to explain this if you don't study prophecy. Hebrews, and therefore also Essenes, experience time differently than the rest of the world does, and then even those 2 don't agree. But think the years start with the head of the year, and they run from March to March, essentially, and then their days start at the twinkling of an eye at twilight hours, which always occurs during the first watch in Israel, which is 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So they have their 12 hours of evening hours first, followed then by 12 hours of daytime, ending then the following twilight. It's crazy, I know, but then to get the average listener to understand, we have to then overlay those Essene months and days with a Gregorian calendar, so I can tell you things like, so my research led me to conclude that the tribulation should start on October 31st, 2025. But that the Lord would then tarry, even though he's not really tarrying because it's an appointed time that only he knows. But the key takeaway is that all these things I'm talking about, for some reason, even predictive programming and media, all says the same thing. only they present it in a way mocking Christians, using entertainment as the vehicle so nobody will believe it, that there's something going to happen in 2025. I can almost hear people saying, "Oh, come on, crazy man." So here's just a few examples of what I'm talking about. And just know, I have about 100 examples that I could play for you. That's just not what this video is about. I'm merely laying the groundwork to help with suspension of disbelief in hopes people hear me out.
50 more years, and we're all gonna know why, when, where, how, and who gets to go. So let's all have a good time before the break of light. As things will start separating come 2025. Salute Brother Santa Cruz. It won't make the front page news. That depends upon which side that you choose. There's a crack in the world.
Called a radio talk show. I gave them the solution to the crisis in the Middle East. Giving the Palestinians Greenland? You heard it? I didn't know that was you. You were great.
Giving the Palestinians Greenland?
It's a big place. Nobody uses it.
You would take a desert people and put them in the ice and snow?
With the proper clothes, they'll be fine.
I'm hearing something.
Our projections show that by the year 2025, not only America, but the entire planet will be under the protection and the dominion of this power alliance. The gains have been substantial, both for ourselves and for you, the human power elite. You have given us entree to the resources we need in our ongoing quest for multidimensional expansion. And in return, the per capita income of each of you here tonight has grown, in this year alone, by an average 39%. And I have just received word that our forces have won a major victory. The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert. The situation is normal again.
Hi everyone, it is January 27th as I say this. I think it's going to be the 28th when I finally get it published. As we get closer to the start of the tribulation, the world is already unrecognizable and with unimaginable things being set up. Unrecognizable to those that live in and for this world. Unimaginable to those that don't read the Bible and don't study prophecy. But I know what's coming, and I do these videos to warn others that Jesus is coming, whether you believe in him or not. And it is my prayer that even one person comes to believe in Jesus Christ through the seeds I cast in his name. All glory to God the highest. I'm of the belief that America is coming under judgment. The weather is insane. The cold alone, not even talking about the wind, ice, and snow, is causing ice quakes in Tennessee where my grandbabies live, and trees are exploding. Yes, I said trees are exploding. This is my grandbaby Eden Grace. She is watching Ryan Hall, y'all. That's her again, all bundled and ready to go play outside, which was short-lived because she was hospitalized soon after this picture was taken due to uncontrollable vomiting and diarrhea. It was coming out both ends, and it's now spreading to the rest of the family. But she's home again safely now. She was in the hospital this past Saturday, I think. This is her big brother, by my own personal sign of Jonah, my grandson, whose real name is Jonah Whaley. And he's learning the cold, hard truth of being an adult by having to wipe the snow and ice off of his Power Wheels that also won't start. Then I had to work on Saturday myself. This was me at 6:30 a.m. I took pictures of them spraying, and then 2 hours later, Florida is covered in chem fog. So, a couple hours ago, I took pictures at 6:30 a.m. that showed my sky was all sprayed heavily. Now it's 8:30, and look at the fog. I can no longer even see the sun. And it smells. Probably not a good idea that I'm outside breathing it in, but if you don't believe that the stuff that they're spraying falls to the ground, I don't know what to say. This last picture is from a watchwoman known as Log Cabin Artist. You've probably seen her in live chats on various channels. She lives near me in a city called Mayaka, a little bit inland. Her visibility was like 50 feet. This was widespread, and we both watched them spray it. And then, ironically, I show people this, and they simply don't believe it. No, I don't know how condensation works. Planes don't spray. That's stupid. You do you, bro. I do a lot of grilling with my electric-powered wood pellet grill, so much so that I burned out the breaker in this outlet, so I decided to, once and for all, get this generator I bought after Hurricane Milton left me with a damaged roof and walls, running for once and put to good use. So now I can say, now we're cooking with gas. I'm saying this at 12:21, which is a chiasm that I'll be talking about in a bit, but essentially a reverse image, similar to 11:11, which is the number that everybody's been seeing, myself included. Temps are now dropping here, south of Tampa Bay. You see, here's where I live and where Log Cabin Artist lives. The temps today will be dropping from the 80s down into the low 20s. We got issued a freeze warning, in fact. This freeze warning is what we received. So I took a drive to my RV that I've nicknamed the Ark, and I never thought I'd be saying this, but I have to turn on its heaters so my pipes don't freeze again, like they did in Tennessee when I first bought it. And I dumped 15 gallons of frozen human waste on the ground. First trip. We got a freeze warning here in Florida tonight, South Florida, Sarasota area, so I am off to visit the Ark. It is 12:30 p.m. and the reason I'm videoing is I don't know if you can see up and to the left here above my finger. I'm trying not to get people's attention thinking that I'm pointing at them, but the moon is enormous. Let me try and zoom. Yeah. The moon is enormous, and it's like only 12:30. It's also in a completely different location than it normally is, if it does show up during the day. Ooh, it's cold in here. Also doesn't smell very good. Putting down the feet so I can open the slide and move around in here. moving sluggish. It's pretty cold. I don't know if you can hear it. It's got auto leveling. It's moving me around. Alright, that's good. And I'll also do a test run of the generator. .49 degrees in here. Damn. I might actually, it says it's switched automatically to gas. That's going to be problematic. I got to go outside and turn on the propane. Alright, I just turned the propane on. It's already 1 degree warmer. I can feel it coming through the ceiling. It's not really coming through the floor. And while I'm here, I'll give you a little tour while it warms up a little bit. There's my TV, it swivels out so I can sit in. This becomes my office. This table also swivels. I run all my power cords for my computers down there when I'm using this as an office. And then I can sit here and watch my favorite channels like God's Land Down Under. When I'm driving, I keep piles of Bibles and stuff up here. There's the couch, which is not that epic. Kitchen. It's got a nice fridge. Nice big fridge. I have about 1 glass full of water in the event of an emergency. I don't know why that's in here. Alright, I pulled the slide in, raised the levelers. The heat's already up to 55 and climbing. I set it for 60. So hopefully that will keep my pipes above freezing. Let's go outside and give it a once over.
last video, or one of my last videos, I speculated that we could be looking at a 21-day delay based on the fact that we see so much happening around Iran, and we know that there is a 21-day delay mentioned in association with the Prince of Persia, and Gabriel and Michael. So I speculated, and it was complete speculation, that we could be looking at the blood moon as being a significant warning, things to come. But because when we see there's a birth before travail, then a birth as soon as travail occurs. So there's two going on there. So I speculate the rapture is that birth before travail, and we need to therefore go before we expect it. So if the blood moon was indeed a warning, 21 days early in from the beginning, I know it's a reversal, it's not a 21-day delay from the blood moon, it's 21 days earlier to fulfill Isaiah 66. Anyway, that was just my speculation. But now in all of this speculation, when I use dates, remember we could be looking at sunset if we're using the Hebrew method, or midnight if we're using the sort of Gregorian method of, change of the day. So basically, there's a sort of could be 6 hour difference, in which could equate to if I say a date 16th, that could be, sunset on the 16th becoming the 17th. So it gets a little bit interesting depending on how you're calculating the start of a day, etc. But just interesting is the fact that the 21-day early rapture before the blood moon of March 3rd, if that was the case, then 840 hours, 84 hours, 3.5 days, this is 35 days in this count, but that 840 or 84 seems to come up a bit. We know that in relation to Rachel and Leah, also with Jacob being renamed Israel, and the year counts associated with his wives being 77 and 84, so we sort of have bookmarks for Israel being 77 and 84 years old. And we also have the Jubilee thrown in there with Mike's recalculation. That doesn't begin until March 16, 17, and Rosh Hashanah, where it should be, because it wasn't changed by 6 months, like we were told in the Bible in Exodus that it should have been. But anyway, this is something I'll discuss that time frame in a minute, or during the video somewhere. It gives us a May 14 time period. If you use sunset and midnight, it works out to be 59 hours, 59 days, 12 hours, 6 minutes. So that'll be the period in between March and May where it is a Jubilee, and Israel is still 77 and 84, because on May 14th, obviously, the anniversary of the formation of Israel, they'll become 85 years old, 78 years old, and hence 7-year tribulation, they'll be 85, which would put us outside of those 77 and 84, go past May 14. So, just for now, I'm still watching February 10 because it's 21 days before the blood moon. But you'll see that blood moon could potentially indicate something else in a moment. So, 21-day delay, and as you can see from Feb 10 to ahead of the year, 840 hours. The blood moon on March the 3rd to the year is 14 days. Now that's interesting. So highlight, like I said, I'm going to waffle a bit here. I'll highlight 2 14-day periods in a minute that seem interesting. Start on the blood moon. 14 days later will bring us to March 16, 17, the head of the year. 14 days later will then bring us to the 31st of March. Now keep that 31st of March in the back of your mind. I'll elaborate on that in a moment. I've got some notes written here that I'm going to try and refer to as well. But just for now, make note of the fact that blood moon this year does occur on Purim, and it's the 3rd that has done so. I'll elaborate on that a bit in a minute. And then we have April. This is on the Hebrew calendar. So we have Purim beginning March 2nd, sunset March 2nd, which is March 3rd. So this is where that sunset midnight thing comes in a bit. So sunset March 2nd, which will become 3rd of March. And we have on the Hebrew calendar Passover this year, April. Begins April 1st, sunset, so April 2nd. Now, let's just have a look at where I'm going with all this. Excuse me. What I've noticed is this. We have some unusual alignments. Now, this is not looking at my Feb 10 date anymore. This is actually focusing, and you'll see there's potential reason for this. Potential good reason. There seems to be a lot of alignment happening, and I know nobody wants to hear dates into the future, but hey, that's something we just have to deal with, because a lot of dates have passed, so the potential for upcoming ones to pass is there as well. We just need to continue to look at the stepping stones that we see forward. But for now, like I said, Feb 10, I'm looking there. But February 28th has got some very interesting alignments for me. Now, I've got pictures everywhere here. I'll just fumble through them all, but I'm going to read from my notes here. If we were to be raptured on February the 28th, that is both Purim on the Essene and the static calendar. Okay, so that's the first point to note. February 28th, potential rapture, is on the Essene and the static calendar. Now, 84 hours later, approximately, we have March 3rd, blood moon, which is on the Hebrew calendar. So we have sort of some interesting connections there. We have a blood moon in association with Purim, and you'll see that that's significant in a minute. The Hebrew calendar for March 3rd, but Purim on the static and the Essene calendar is about 84 hours prior to that, on February 28th. Now, this is where we notice two 14-day periods. From that blood moon, if you go 14 days, you reach the head. So basically, we have the Hebrew calendar Purim is sunset March 2nd. Static calendar Purim is February 28th. Essene calendar Purim is February 28th. Hebrew calendar Passover, April 2nd sunset. Essene calendar Passover, March 31st, I assume sunset. Now let's have a look through some pictures here. The Essene calendar also has the first day of spring beginning on March 17, which is that head of the year that I talked about, March 16, 17, which is 14 days from the blood moon. And you can see there on the slide, that's spring up there, Nisan spring, that's actually March 17 there. March 31st, this is on the Essene calendar for Passover. Let's have a look through my slides now. Yep, spring and Passover. That's just a zoomed in view. Interestingly, the Feast of Esther begins on March 2nd, and Purim sunsets March 2nd, becoming March 3rd. So I guess the Feast of Esther begins on sunset March 1st, really. And that's before Purim, obviously, which is when we're having a blood moon on the Hebrew calendar. Let's have a look. And here we have on the Hebrew calendar showing a Passover beginning sunset April 2nd. April 1st, becoming April 2nd. So April 2nd is the first day. So let's keep going. This is our lunar eclipse, 2nd, 3rd March lunar eclipse, and you see this is where it gets a bit difficult to line days up exactly, hence no man might know the exact day or hour, but I think we're going to be very close. So this is the blood moon upcoming, visible in Asia, Australia, North America. This is the last until New Year's blood moon eclipse. So let's just skip through these for a second. We'll go to the bit about the blood moon, and I'll come back. Here we go. On March 4, this is for last year. On March 14, there will be a lunar eclipse that coincides with the celebration of Purim that is found in the book of Esther. What makes this incredibly significant is that it happened last year and will line up with Purim in 2026 as well. So, while this is a 2025, I'm now talking about the final eclipse that you can see in that image there of 3. So this one is very significant. It is a Purim eclipse. It links us to the book of Esther, and that makes this all the more interesting. The blood moon that occurs during Purim will happen 14 days after the 7-day planet alignment that just occurred. So this was last year. But interestingly enough, we have a planetary alignment coming up this year, not on Purim, but on February the 28th. 6 planets, interestingly enough. I've got a lot of slides to go to. February 28th, 2026, a rare planetary alignment will light up the pre-dawn sky. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune will appear along the same arc following the ecliptic. So this is for February the 28th, when I need to get some new batteries for my caravan. When I'm suspecting that we could potentially see a big event, and a rapture event maybe, like I'm not setting a date on no more than I ever have done. You know, I've been wrong so often. I'm possibly going to be wrong now, but I have a reason to be looking at this day as a possibility for the rapture. This is not a thus saith the Lord. I'm not prophesying anything. I'm just speculating. The number of man is 6. Also, anyway, let's head on back for a bit to where I was. So, something else interesting on February 28th, the Torah reading 20. Yeah, that's it there. That's the Torah reading that they'll be reading on that day, Exodus. And it has the mention of pure beaten olive oil for the light, that a lamp may regularly be set. Now that sort of reminds me a bit of the 10 virgins and the oil. So on the 27th, there's this kind of a Torah reading that, you know, loosely could, well, it involves oil and lamps like the 10 virgins. I find that interesting too. So remember, at this point I'm speculating something potentially on February 28th. 84 hours later, February the 28th being Purim on the Essene and the static calendar. 84 hours later, we have a blood moon, a Purim blood moon on the Hebrew calendar, the third of 3 that have occurred. Very interesting, very significant. I bet you Jarrett over at Supernatural by Design is probably all over that. Then 14 days later, we have the head of the year, and then 14 days after that, we have seen Passover on March the 31st, and then 84 hours after that we have Passover on the Hebrew calendar. So my dog is snoring next to me as usual. Let me just go through where we're at. Okay, we're back to the beginning. Yep, done that one, done that calendar. I imagine that probably means sunset March 30, but like I said, just, you know, we've got a day, sort of 12 hours or 6 hours sort of here and there, so give us a bit of leeway, because calculating these different calendars and reconciling them to, you know, the change of the day as we see it in the Gregorian method, with it being midnight, it gets all messy, doesn't it? Seen that one for the blood moon, Purim blood moon era, and there was, yeah, that was just Passover again. I think I covered those in, yeah, those two there. That's the same calendar, Hebrew calendar there. The eclipse, I've told you that. Now this is something interesting from Brother David. This is why this whole period now that we're looking at, particularly from the blood moon onwards, is really grabbing my attention. So David said, my thinking is, I'm obviously watching 3:17 because of the Essene prophecy, close brackets, but my thinking is that the regular Jews, the Pharisees in power, didn't recognise the Messiah and weren't looking for him. That's a really valid statement. They weren't looking for him. Stands to reason that the Gentiles around the place weren't looking for Jesus either. Okay? So, Pharisees in power didn't recognise the Messiah and weren't looking for him. But the Essenes prophesied, and they did. And my assertion is that the people flipping out and laying palm branches and clothing in front of Jesus' trial, if they had a record of being 100% correct, my money is on them. Okay, so who else would have been doing the palm branch thing? I mean, that was a really good point from David. It wouldn't have been the regular Jews. It certainly wouldn't have been Gentiles. The word wouldn't have got around. This was all very early stages. So who would it be? It was probably the Essenes. Why did they vanish? Because, I mean, historically, there's not much known about the Essenes, really. They seem to have just vanished from history, from what I can gather. Brother David's the expert on this, so I'm really only parroting by poor memory things that he said. But, you know, his assertion is that the Essenes were no longer found because they became Christians. They saw Jesus. They recognised the Messiah was coming. They saw him crucified. This was probably them with the palm branches, etc. I said, that's a very good point. And then David went on to say, reason I say I'm watching 3/7 is because of the vernal equinox. So we know it's the head of the year, the day of equilux, it's day of equal parts, equal daylight hours. This is Mike's head of the year, where the Jews didn't change it back. Mike got this from the verse about Lazarus, are there not 12 hours in the day? This was where he initially got his sort of ideas from. But carrying on from David, so let's say the Essenes did get it correct, then that sort of, and it is lining up this year, the Essene calendar is lining up with Mike's static calendar. Interestingly, the Hebrew calendar this year is not very far out either. It appears to be only about 84 hours out from both the Essene and the static calendar. Now, that's if I'm reading everything correct. Okay, so we've got basically David saying, hey, this is interesting. Let's look at the head of the year, the vernal equinox. Okay, March 16, 17. This is where 14 days from that blood moon. And then 14 days from that is 31st, Passover. At sunset, becoming April Fool's Day. So you can see the sort of thought process that David's putting forward here. And what we see, particularly this year with Purim and Passover, is that all three calendars are very close. The Hebrew calendar seems to fall on the blood moon. The Essene calendar, 14 days later, the head of the year, 14 days after that, March 31st, Passover, and then 84 hours after that, Passover for the Hebrew calendar. There seems to be a lot of 14s and 84s in here, all associated. If we start on February 28th, 84 hours later to the blood moon. So this blood moon is speaking to me a lot. So there's the blood moon. Vernal equinox day is our first 14-day period. There's another slide just showing Purim on February 28th on the Essene calendar. Yeah, that's an enlarged one, Feb 28th. And spring, that was the Torah reading for Feb 28th, and the potential relation to oil and lamps and maybe even the virgins. And the very next verse, in the tent of meeting outside the veil, that is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall tend it from evening to morning before the Lord. So, Esther, let's have a talk about Esther. Actually occurred over a period of 10 years. Now, I've done a bit of search. I'd previously studied Esther. This is just for informational purposes, really. If you're having a look at the screen, this breakdown of the events in Esther over a 10-year period gives you sort of an indication of when things happened. And notice it has month and day there. We've got a lot of 13, and then a 14, 15 right at the end. And the months, 12, 3, 12, 1, 1, 10. There's probably something in this, because like if this blood moon, this last of 3 blood moons, it's a Purim blood moon, is pointing to the book of Esther, then there are probably some real clues in here as to when this down. And I've speculated that for a long time, but this is a waffle video and I can't really, it's too deep because I'm not going to open Stellarium and do all that sort of stuff. But here was another reference that I found, crossroadsbible.net. It was about the chronology of Esther, showing when it first, this is probably not taking into account that 0 year, the BC thing, so they're completely accurate if you have been following Mike at all and the calculation of BC AD. It gets quite messy, but so it starts at 483 BC. It goes for 10 years to 473 BC. This is the timeline for the chronology in Esther. There it is there. You could possibly pause that and enlarge it and have a bit of a look. I'll scroll through for you, but gives you some ideas and markers that happened along the way. Rebellion of Egypt, conquest of Egypt, Babylon rebels and destroyed, and these are all during that 10-year period. So there were some historical markers in there as well. The timeline for the chronology in Esther. There it is there. You could possibly pause that and enlarge it and have a bit of a look. I'll scroll through for you, but gives you some ideas and markers that happened along the way. Rebellion of Egypt, reconquest of Egypt, Babylon rebels and destroyed, and these are all during that 10-year period. So there were some historical markers in there as well, plus those events that you can see there taken with the chapter and verse reference there. Okay, so that was Esther. So I'm saying we have got a link to Esther. I don't know exactly what it is right now. Esther and what was the other one? Song of Songs are the only two books in the Hebrew Bible that do not mention God directly. What do we got here? Oh, this was just a Wikipedia. You could pause and read that if you wanted to. Just a little bit of relationship to Esther now. Also known as Esther, who becomes Queen of Persia. My dog's snoring away, sorry. Persia. So there we have the mention of Persia in this 21-day delay again. So that sort of ties to Esther as well. Hence I'm still watching Feb 10. You can, there it says there, this is Wikipedia. The Book of Esther and Song of Songs are the only books in the Hebrew Bible that do not mention God explicitly. Traditional Judaism views the absence of God's overt intervention in the story as an example of how God can work through seemingly coincidental events and the actions of individuals. The Jewish book is at the center of the Jewish festival of Purim. So we know we have a Purim blood moon, a connection to Esther, a connection to who becomes Queen of Persia and thwarts the genocide of her people. Very interesting stuff. You can pause on that slide as well if you want, just for some information. But I'm not going to read all that out. It's just from Wikipedia. So there we have the 3 blood moons, that article, as I mentioned, from 2025, but we are now in 2026, and this blood moon is looking very significant on March 2nd to 3rd. Have a pause on this and have a read of that, or go to momanna.life and have a look up Adar and lunar eclipses, March 8, 2025, the article. So there was 7 planets aligned back then when that happened, and we have 6 aligning 84 hours before this occurs this time in 2026. Find that interesting too. 7 planet alignment when this happened in 2025, and a 6 planet alignment 84 hours before this happens in 2026. It's another slide you can read. There's a little bit of history about Esther again there. I'm not going to read it all out. This is pages long, but it is worth pausing and reading. So there are our 6 planets aligning on February 28th, and I like the mention of after sunset. Now, we often speculate about when the rapture could happen in the twinkling of an eye. And we often see that as that period sort of beginning with sunset, but possibly extending through, the twilight period, civil, nautical and astronomical. So the best time to see these planets. The 6 planets will align in the evening sky, February 28th to 26th after sunset. So that's when they're actually aligning, in that twinkling of an eye period on February the 28th.
And I'm back. Okay, I'm going to go over all the things Brett just discussed to showcase even more ways the watchmen are in alignment about the importance and implications of watching for Jesus' return for his bride every day right now. But especially the conclusions we are all arriving at and in alignment on regarding the month of March 2026. Even the calendars are coming together in ways I hadn't anticipated, and I think Brett just unlocked some of that. We each have only a piece of the puzzle. Brett has always seen things in the cracks and around corners that I've never been able to see. I see things mostly at a macro level that allows me to move things around as big blocks. Then I drill in systematically. In other words, I see the world and interact with it like I'm a project manager, which I am in real life. And I don't see a lot of this sort of thing. March 3rd, as Brett said, is a blood moon lunar eclipse on Purim, as per the Hebrew calendar. I'll place thought bubbles from time to time through this, just put a pin in each, and I'll connect the dots of what I'm seeing at the end. Purim is about a Gentile bride. 84 hours before Purim on the Hebrew calendar is February 28th, which is Purim on the Essene calendar. 84 hours. Another way to put that is 3.5 days. Blood moons throughout time have not been events. They've been signs or warnings of coming events, harbingers, like the blood moon lunar eclipse that happened when Jonah came out of the belly of a whale to prophesy to the Ninevites, who worshipped Dagon, a fish god. If you don't repent, in 40 days you will be destroyed. And they all repented, and therefore Nineveh escaped judgment that time. Then the blood moon lunar eclipse on Thursday, April 14th, 32 AD, hours from when Jesus died on the cross and gave up the ghost. But remember, Jesus also prophesied to the scribes and Pharisees in Matthew 12 and Mark 8 that there would only be one sign for a wicked and adulterous generation, the sign of the prophet Jonah. And I suggest that the scribes and the Pharisees both had different reasons for asking for that sign. The Pharisees wanted to trip up Jesus and corner him with the law, where I believe the scribes were Essenes, and they asked for that sign because they were already aware of the messianic window prophecy of the time frame for the triumphal entry of the Messiah, and here was Jesus. Although they were expecting Melchizedek because their prophecy was given 150 years before Jesus' birth, so they didn't know his name would be Jesus. If you haven't seen my extra biblical study on Melchizedek that says Melchizedek is the only person in biblical history to have lived both in the days of Noah and the days of Lot, yet he wasn't on the ark, watch this video for more info on that. At any rate, that's Jonah himself setting the type, then Jesus citing Jonah's death, burial in the whale of a belly, and rising from the dead during a blood moon lunar eclipse as the sign the first wicked generation would get. What's the rapture? It's a form of exodus, right? A divine intervention, snatching away from danger and whisking to safety at the last second. Since it's a form of exodus, let's look in the book of Exodus. Exodus 4:8 seems to prophesy of a second sign of Jonah, and therefore a second blood moon, for an end of the age of grace event that mirrors the start of the age of grace event. Exodus 4:8, and it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, meaning the evidence, that they will believe the voice or evidence of the latter sign, latter meaning last, or the one at the end. Do you see where I'm going with this? March 3rd, 2026, there will be a blood moon lunar eclipse. Put another pin there. Then Brett talked about Isaiah 66 prophecy that launched everyone's interpretation and understanding of the fig tree generation prophecy with verse 8. But check it out. The verse before that, verse 7, there's this weird verse that seems to randomly mention another man-child being born, but this time before the woman even feels the pain of labor. I'll read both verses. Noting the order of them, listen with ears to hear. Isaiah 66, verses 7 and 8. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. So all this time, most people have only been focusing on verse 8 for the birth of the nation of Israel in one day. If we turn that into a type, these now two sequential prophecies prophesy of the tribulation and what happens just before the tribulation, before the woman's labor pains, before tribulation, she gives birth to a man-child. It's also the reverse, or a chiasm, or a mirror of the launching of the Age of Grace. Okay, let's freeze it there. I am stopping this because something just occurred to me. I never do this. I'm actually editing the video right now, but when this came up, the 12:21, it occurred to me, 1 became 2, and then 2 become 1. So Jesus left behind the Holy Spirit for his future bride, and then the bride returns to become one with Jesus again. Just a thought. I return you now to your previously whatever. Jesus had to become sin and enter tribulation and judgment for us, only to emerge victorious afterward, to rise and be brought forth as the glorified man-child, our Lord and Savior, as the bridegroom, at the end of the age of grace for his bride. It will be a reversal of that, birth or ascension and glorification of the bride before tribulation. The bride, as per Luke 21, the ones that prayed to be accounted worthy to escape, and who watched, and who excitedly searched out a matter like kings and loved his returning, will be the ones standing before the Son of Man, meaning many of them living in the end days will not taste mortal death. They will not enter the tribulation. The bride will be ready to meet and receive her bridegroom. March 3rd is when the blood moon eclipse that may very well be the second sign of Jonah for Exodus 4:8 happens. And Brett talked about this too. All these 14-day sequences. The blood moon eclipse happens exactly 14 days before 3/17. Let's look at my timeline. What's special about 3/17? And I'm not talking about St. Patrick's Day, but since I brought it up, it's weirdly coincidental that this quote-unquote fixed feast commemorating the death of the patron saint of Ireland that's celebrated around the world, even though it's for Ireland, with heavy public intoxication and parades, always and only, and this year, falls on the date that the Age of Grace ends. Worthy of note, however, this day also holds some historical significance for Israel, like Golda Meir, becoming Israel's first female prime minister in 1969 on March 17th. But just before Israel became a nation in a day, on May 14th, 1958, on March 17th, 1958, the United States Navy's Vanguard 1 satellite launched.
After two much-publicized failures, Project Vanguard scores a bullseye on its third firing at Cape Canaveral. A grapefruit-sized satellite is set into the nose cone of a three-stage rocket, and the launching routine begins. The countdown goes with amazing ease, even faster than that of the Jupiter C. Only 16 seconds off a precision schedule, the Vanguard blasts off. It's one of the most perfect flights ever seen at the Missile Center, and there's not a hitch along the way, as the tiny moon is catapulted into the farthest orbit yet, 2,500 miles out. This launching was basically an experiment to test the rocket's flight pattern, preparatory to the launching of a 21-inch satellite later this year. Successful orbiting of a 6-inch moon was sheer profit as far as the engineers were concerned, making the first good news from Project Vanguard very good news indeed for all America.
Check this out. also on March 17th. But in the year 1776, following a nearly year-long siege, General George Washington placed cannons on Dorchester Heights, making the city undefendable for the British, who then sailed for Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is strangely where my mother is from. This day is also known as Evacuation Day. What's a synonym for evacuation? Exodus. Both words imply a large-scale, often rapid, movement away from a place. And then last and absolutely and ironically least, March 17th is called Campfire Girls Day, founded in 1910, and on that day the organization is celebrated and honored as the first non-sectarian, multiracial, progressive, and inclusive organization for girls. Ironically, the group focusing on empowering girls closes down after adapting to be inclusive of all genders, but specifically after empowering boys to dress as and identify as girls. So even this article's statement of Campfire Girls being remembered, celebrated, and honored is suspect because publicly they are hated by the very group they empowered to take them down from within, that they, by their own admission, are proud to have included. What a circular firing squad. Back to the present. March 17th this year on the Essene calendar is called Tefuka Nisan. It is the vernal equinox, or the first day of spring. Check. Song of Songs, the story of a bridegroom excitedly coming for his bride in spring. Check. It's the day the final eschatological jubilee of the Essene prophecy and prediction of the second messianic window begins. Check. Add 14 more days, that's March 31st, the literal last day, according to the Essenes, and that's who I study and base all my conclusions on. It's why at the top of my timeline, I call it the Essene timeline. I'm not talking about what other people see or calculate. I've mentioned this maybe 100 times. If we stop and argue about every single point, we cannot hear or receive. I keep saying I need to get a shirt that says preconceptions suck. But if we add 14 more days to March 17th, it's March 31st, and the literal last day of 6,000 years from creation by their counting. Yes, I said 6,000. I count ages or dispensations the same way rabbinical priests do, the same way the Essenes did, and of course, in a similar way to later Christians like Clarence Larkin did. I've got all of his charts. Dispensations or ages, I'll stick with the Essene to ages, plotted out biblical history by calculating events in the ages and generations of patriarchs into epochs of time that reflect the Genesis account of the 7 days of creation. A day is to 1,000 years, in other words. I didn't make it up. I'm not the first one to say these things, and I won't be the last. Well, I might be one of the last if I'm right. I certainly hope I'm right. And this is how I study. I don't know how others study, but this is how I study. A viewer commented on one of my last videos, Daughter of Yah, I believe is her name, that 3/18 is Nisan 1, or first day of spring, on the Hebrew calendar this year. And honestly, I don't really look at or study the Hebrew calendar. I'm always nose deep in the Essene calendar, but how crazy is that, then, that it's the same day on the Essene calendar this year? The quest God gave his future kings was to search out a matter, not to be right. God makes everything right. It's the race, not the finish line, that's our focus, in other words. If that was the case, then only the winner of the race gets the prize. But it's not. God wants to see all of us running the race and finishing well. Hebrews 12:1 and 2 also speaks of this. My point in bringing up 3:18 is that that's the day that follows the end of grace on my timeline per the Essenes' countdown to the final Jubilee that reminded me of Hosea 6:2. After 2 days will he revive us. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. We can think of the days mentioned in this verse as literal days, single days, and we can also think of them in terms of 1,000 or 2,000 year long ages. I'll read it again, but take special note of the timing of things, meaning think as we transition from one day, it becomes the next. No matter if it's the first literal day of 1,000 year long day in creation terms, or the 100th day into the 1,000 years, it's still in that day. After 2 days, which could be taken to mean the age of Torah and the age of grace. After those 2 days will he revive us, pausing for impact, in the third day. He will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Do with that what you will, but specifically what I found thought-provoking was that on 3:17, one literal age ends, and on 3:18, we're in the next age. And yes, what then do we do with the tribulation's 7 years? Is that part of grace or part of the millennium? My conclusion, based on research, is that the tribulation falls outside or between both. The tribulation is a tiny event window prophecy of its own. Because the Essene's 6,000 year count literally ends on March 17th, that's when they say the age of grace ends. It's the 6,000th year from their year one Anno Mundi, which equates to 3975 BC. Are we looking at a reversal? We went from count starting with Jesus' crucifixion, which is him entering into tribulation on our behalf, with a blood moon lunar eclipse during and at the midpoint, because Mark 15:33 says, at the 6th hour, darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, at the front end of grace, to a countdown at the back end of grace, meaning if this is going to be a chiasm of the crucifixion and resurrection, then the rising of the bride will happen first, before the tribulation starts, typified by the crucifixion. Again, just like it said in Isaiah 66:7, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. And since the blood moon lunar eclipse happened both during Jonah's preaching, which happened after he rose, and Jesus' crucifixion, which happened before he rose but after crucifixion, then this lends additional credence to a pre-tribulation rapture of the bride, where the bride rises first in the sequence, the order of Exodus 4:8 mirrored, and the blood moon on March 3rd may very well happen during it. And that will be the second sign of Jonah for a second wicked generation that says essentially, look guys, you've botched it again, but Jesus gave you all these signs so that when they happen, and they just did, you will know that he is God. That was your sign, and you missed it again. So Luke 21's mentioned escape happened. Next up is Mark 13 for the tribulation saints. What's the last word in Mark 13, verse 37? Watch. Last chance, Trib saints, watch and know the time of Jesus' return for you guys. And finally, after the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled, we will move on to Matthew 24 for the Jews. And if you've seen my study on the differences in the synoptic gospels, you'll know I showcase how Luke is to the bride, Mark is to the tribulation saints, and Matthew is to the Jews. And Matthew, of the three, is the only one that doesn't contain language telling them to watch, because they've quite literally missed it every single time. So God's going to crack his knuckles, euphemistically, and get to work with Israel during the Great Tribulation. That's all for them. So here's a recap. March 17th is the head of the year. It's when grace ends. It's the beginning of the second messianic window as per the only remaining unfulfilled Essene prophecy still on the books at the beginning of their final eschatological jubilee, whose days will be shortened lest no flesh survive, of Matthew 24:22 fame. And when you add 14 days, again, to March 17th, you get March 31st, the start of the new year, and Passover, the mirror of Jesus' crucifixion at the beginning of the age of grace, within the first Essene messianic window prophecy that was fulfilled by Jesus showing up instead of Melchizedek, whom the Essenes thought would be the Messiah, since when they made that prophecy, it was 150 years before Jesus' birth. So they made an assumption. Or did they? Funny story, I only met Brett, I guess it's been 2 years now. I thought it was only last year, just before Purim. But it was Purim 2024 when I first returned from being banned on YouTube for 2 years. And I reached out to him. when he did a video in 2024 studying the moon cycles and talking about Purim. And here we are doing it again. All of our lives has changed dramatically since only 2 years, 1 year actually, ago, especially Brett's. He's now living nomadically in his caravan. When I first met him, I think he was better off than I am. I keep telling him, you know, man, life is always very tough for those of us that God is intending to lead somewhere and open a door, whether for you or to put you in a place for someone else that you haven't even met yet or don't even know exists, or possibly to keep you hidden and protected from the eyes of the enemy until his return. Brett's a friend, so I know everything that is going on with him behind the scenes, what he's been going through, and in the place he was at just a week ago. Honestly, it was only a matter of time before things could potentially get very ugly for him there. Constant dog attacks, police snooping around, the deceived hurling insults and ugliness at him when he tried to help people. I believe there is a territorial, spiritual, demonic presence at the place that he left. But despite it all, he didn't even want to be there, but God led him. And while he was there for a full year, he encountered 2 lost people that he didn't know. He may very well have led them to the Lord without knowing it by planting seeds and caring for them. As difficult as it was for him to be forced to move such as he was, I look at him now, and I hope he doesn't get mad with me telling these things that he told me in private, but God led him to now be living off-grid, just as the Australian government is doing their slow rollout of the Beast system by disabling mobile device chat and emergency dialing capabilities that happened within a recent update yesterday or the day before. I Googled it. It's true. They said it was supposed to be a patch pushed out to all mobile devices to enhance emergency services. Instead, they stripped everybody of them. So what are we going to see happen? Soon repeat of Bondi, only on a larger scale, and this time with nobody able to call the police. Next step will be to disable mobile communications entirely. Last year, I sent a global radio to him. It's not great technology. I'm certain there's better out there, but it needed to be small and get through customs. He received it and tested it out just before that door closed. I had so much trouble even getting that out of the U.S. I even got into an argument with a UPS guy that just starts cutting open the box and begins disassembling it. It was new in the box. I'd never opened it. I admit I cursed a bit. I said, WTF, what are you doing? He wouldn't even look at me. He mumbled something about federal customs regulations about sending transmitters, and I said, I haven't even paid you for your services yet, and I did not give you permission to tear it open. He's like, so you don't want to ship it? There was a stupid back and forth, I'll spare you, but I got the supervisor over there. They called their leaders at the distribution center, and I finally got someone to listen to me for a second, which was, I just wanted to say, I want to ship it with you, but your boy here is breaking it and it's new. Who's going to take responsibility for this if it gets all the way to Tasmania and it doesn't work because you broke it here before it even left? I mean, all told, the like postage and everything for that was nearly $1,000, and they weren't going to take responsibility for it. I am certain I would not be able to get him a radio now. What this thing does is it's like a global walkie-talkie that uses LTE infrastructure, but it's outside of the LTE providers using the infrastructure. And as long as we both are within so many miles of a tower that has power, regardless of if the providers using these towers are down, we will still be able to talk. And it's clear as a bell and encrypted and untraceable. So in other words, it's exactly the sort of device a borderline communist government that is systematically already shutting down people's ability to communicate would have wanted to stop us from having shipped there. But God was with that package, I believe. I prayed over it, and it got there, and it works. I sent these radios to a few other watchmen, so if and when comms go down for Brett, or any of us really, we can stay in contact, primarily with Brett. So Brett is predominantly off-grid now. Currently, the police or anybody would have quite some difficulty finding him with, being 3.5 hours away and in the middle of nowhere from where he was last seen. He tells me he's got access to an actual church and an actual messianic community, and this is something special. I think God has led Brother Brett to a safe place. I think Brett did step up to the plate and interact with the two people God needed him to, and now he's protecting him. I pray always that I am accounted worthy to escape all the things coming upon this world so I can still be standing to receive the Son of Man when he comes for us. I think Brett's and my prayers for him were answered. At any rate, are we interpreting things correctly? Has Brett and Mike and myself and many others all seeing March 17th or 31st or April Fool's Day sorted the window for Jesus' return for us?
You said you knew everything. I routinely design and run mathematical paradigms based on global, political, and socioeconomic conditions in an effort to predict future events. And one spring morning, the data coalesced, and it told me, in no uncertain terms, that the world would, well, end. Calculator told you that. The date of the end of the world may not interest you, Mr. Howard, but the date the data coalesced might. April 14th. The moment that you bought your ticket to Las Vegas, the date the world was going to end jumped forward by 1 month.
I made this.